Hello, everyone. Welcome to worship today. We are the Hitches. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Nate, and these are our daughters.
I'm Quinn. I'm Skylar.
And we're so glad that you could join us today for worship. We've been part of Calvary now for 5 years.
What I like about Calvary is the suckers and their music. What I love about Calvary is that they welcome everyone.
What we loved about Calvary was when we first moved here, how wonderful of a community it was and how welcoming, as Quinn had said, it was for everybody that we met and our whole family.
I love how they're able to take a message and make it relatable to everyday life. And we hope that you're able to experience the same thing.
Calvary's mission is to lead all people to a lifelong faith in Jesus Christ. Before we begin worship, we want to share with you several ways you can get involved in that mission.
Here at Calvary, we're getting ramped up for an exciting fall of kid and student programming. Our girls can't wait. We have programs for both Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings. To find out more and sign up, head to our website, calvaryalec.org, and hit the button that says Kids and Student Programming. As always, kids and student ministries are totally free and totally fun. All are welcome.
It's just 2 weeks until Labor Day weekend. Where did the summer go? This Sunday, we hold our last Calvary at the Lake service of the season, and the following week, we launch into our new weekly worship schedule. On Sunday mornings, we will hold 2 services at the church, a traditional service in the sanctuary at 8:30 a.m. and a modern service at 10:30 in the worship center. On Wednesdays, we'll hold another modern service at 6:30 p.m. with a pizza meal served prior to the service.
Looking to get more involved in Calvary? We're holding a fall volunteer rally on Monday, August 29th at 6 p.m. There are opportunities to lead adult connect groups, serve as ushers and greeters, or on one of our worship tech teams. Use your gifts to lead groups of our kids or students, help organize service opportunities, or share your musical talents. To get involved, join us for our fall volunteer rally on Monday, August 29th. Sign up at our website today.
As we get ready to worship, if you're looking for a little daily inspiration, like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or subscribe to Calvary on YouTube.
Today, Angie is launching a new worship service called Emotions. God gave each of us the capacity to feel deeply, from hurt to anxiety to anger. Our emotions can be electric and at times overwhelming. Many of us spend a whole lot of energy trying to avoid, harness, and even stuff our emotions. That's why Paul wrote, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation bring your requests to God, and let the peace of God, which passes all understanding, guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ."
As we gather, we bring everything to God, our hearts, our minds, even our emotions, knowing that God is the peace we need. God is the peace we are all looking for, the peace that passes all understanding. Thanks again for joining us. Let's worship.
So it was just over a decade ago. I was in a really tough space in my life. I had decided to leave a job at the church that I had loved after working there for 7 years because I was expecting my 4th child. We had a great big going away party on a Sunday afternoon, and I cried and the church cried, and I was so sad that this part of my life was coming to a close. But I was excited because I was 13 weeks pregnant, and I knew that I was doing the right thing to go home and be there for my 4th little one. The next day, I went back into the office to just grab a couple of boxes when all of a sudden I felt a pain in my stomach. And that is when I realized that I was miscarrying this last one. It was my 4th miscarriage, the 3rd in a row. And I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken with grief in the biggest way possible. I had this loss of purpose from this job that I had loved, and then I had this baby that I wasn't going to have anymore. And so my whole being just hurt. And anyone who's ever been pregnant or miscarried before, you know that your hormones are also wacky on top of that. My emotions at this time were just all over the place. I felt like I was out of control. I met with a doctor soon after, and we came up with this extensive plan to try and figure out why I was miscarrying so frequently. All these scans and medications that I was going to take in order to try and get pregnant. It was the same time frame that my parents were getting ready to celebrate their 60th birthday party. And my parents, they were born just about a month apart from each other. And so I decided that I would throw them a huge surprise party. So I invited everybody. Our family came in from Tennessee. My mom's siblings all came in. So did my dad's. I invited all of my aunts and uncles. My sister Emily flew in with her husband from Colorado. I invited my dad's golf buddies and my mom's Bible study group and all their neighbors. And we pulled off the surprise. It was so exciting, and I couldn't believe it. And we had this really great evening. Eventually, like every awesome party, people started to go one by one, and the last people that were left were all of our family. And so since we were all together, we decided that we would do what you do when your family's all gathered together, and we would take a family photo, kind of like this one. We all stood there to take this family photo, and we cheesed a couple of times. And then all of a sudden, while we're taking this family photo, my brother-in-law says, "Okay, now everyone say, Emily's pregnant." And then we got this on camera. My youngest sister, Emily, announced right then to our whole family at this birthday party that she was expecting. And it was this amazing news. I was over the moon, excited for her and her family. It was their first pregnancy, their first baby. But here's the thing. At this exact moment, when I was so excited for my little sister, I also felt this great, big, deep grief and pain for myself. In one hand, I held all this joy and excitement, and in the other hand, I held all this sorrow and confusion. And as I made eye contact with my husband, Ryan, I could see that he was holding the same thing. You see, we had two very different emotions going on at the exact same time, super confusing and super complicated. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about emotions. The summer's coming to an end, and when the summer comes to an end, we experience all kinds of emotions. We're sad that our summer days are ending and that our vacations are numbered, and we're also excited and anxious about a new school year starting, a new rhythm, a new pace of life. As my daughter says, during this time of year, we have all the feels. And for those of you taking college students back, you know that that comes with a big transition and you have lots of emotion around it. So here's my question for you today. How are you doing really? Like, how's it going? Really, truly, how are you doing really? Not just the Midwestern sort of short answers that we all have, like busy or fine or good, but how are you doing really? Studies show that in our culture, people on average can name about 3 emotions. The ones that they tend to name are happy, sad, and angry. But yet researchers have identified over 150 emotions and experiences that human beings actually have. Yeah, we're happy and sad and angry, but we also experience shame, disappointment, wonder, awe, disgust, despair, envy, contentment, boredom, brave, so on and so on and so on. God has created us with such a breadth and depth of human experience that we can't just help but to sit in awe of all of it, all of this emotion in one body. And so often we can actually experience multiple of these all at the same time. Isn't that kind of amazing and complicated and incredible all together? So I'm going to ask you again, how are you doing really? My friends, we've all got stuff. Every single last one of us. Even that person that you think that seems to have all their stuff together, they have stuff too. For some of us, some of this emotion, it just sits right on our skin. It just lives right on the edge of our bodies. But for others of us, it's maybe feelings that are deep, deep down inside. Some of us, we seem to feel everything, but then for others, we seem kind of detached from our feelings. But when it comes to emotion, here's the truth. Most of us don't talk about them. We don't talk about them very much in our culture and in our lives at all. Maybe we come from a Scandinavian family where we're known for being kind of stoic, which really means not expressing emotion at all. Or maybe your family had kind of a hot mess of emotion running around all the time, and so it wasn't safe to talk about what you were feeling at all in a healthy way. The truth is, for most of us, we're wildly uncomfortable talking about emotions. So it's a really good thing that we're doing this in church. When it comes to our emotions, we tend to manage them in a couple of ways. One way is that we armor up. I know this might surprise you because we've only been together for about 3 years. You've only known me for about 3 years, but for such a long time in my life before that, I was really kind of a person who was detached from my feelings. I never cried. And my friends, they knew this fact about me. And so they thought that this was hilarious, that I just never cried. I never expressed emotion like that. Now I cry all the time. But back then, they would send me all these videos trying to get me to cry. It was like a challenge that they wanted me to do. They'd send me either military homecoming videos or adoption videos or those cochlear implant videos, you know, the ones where all of a sudden a baby gets to hear their parent's voice for the very first time. And honestly, for a long time, these beautiful videos, when I held them, I held those kind of things and all of my emotions at arm's length. I kept this thick armor of toughness, of invulnerability, of not feeling that thing. And I thought that this armor, I thought that it was actually serving me. I thought it was protecting me. It would protect me against the hurts and pains of this world. If I didn't feel anything, then I couldn't really get hurt, could I? But here's the thing about armoring up. You can't self-select what you numb and armor against. If you don't feel sadness, then you also can't feel joy. If you don't feel anger, then you can't also feel love. Armor is armor, or numbing is numb. It just keeps everything out. And so God created us in a way that we have to have the good with the bad. We have to be able to hold both of those things. Or the second thing that we do to try and manage our emotions is that we minimize them. We downplay what we're feeling because we're afraid to feel it too big. We're afraid to feel it too deeply. So we actually minimize our feelings. And we do this most often, actually, with joy. We are afraid that this feeling that we're having that's so big and so happy, we're afraid that it's just fleeting. And so we wrap it up in fear and justification instead of just letting ourselves well up with this feeling of joy. But we also do this with grief. When we lose somebody that we have loved with our whole heart, people ask us how we're saying, we say, you know what, I'm okay. We minimize it because talking about it makes us feel uncomfortable. And the last way that we manage our emotions is that we maximize it. A couple of years ago, I had myself in the pickup line at the school, at the elementary school, ready to pick up my elementary kids. And it was like the 160th day in a row that I had done it. It was in the spring, and I was ready to be done. I was exhausted and burnt out, doing the same thing over and over and over again, day after day. And so I just sat there in the pickup line waiting to get my kids, and my brain started wandering, and I started imagining. I imagined that I just took my car and pulled it out of the pickup line, and that I would just drive and drive and drive until I ran out of gas, and then I would find a lovely hotel room where I would get for myself. And in my hotel room, I would order room service, and I would watch a movie, and get this, I would sleep. I would sleep until I was actually done sleeping. That's right, no alarms, no kids, no dogs, nothing to wake me up at all. And I sort of came out of my little emotional fantasy when my kids opened the car door to get in after school, and immediately I was racked with mom guilt. Did I just find myself fantasizing about deep joy about abandoning my children? This whole 5-minute fantasy, it just really bothered me. And that night I felt like I had to confess it to my husband. Unfortunately, I had a counseling appointment the next morning. And so I went into the office and I told my counselor this whole experience. And then I started crying. And I was like, I can't believe I visioned abandoning my kids. I'm such a bad mom. And the counselor, he let me talk for a little while. And then finally he said, well, that's wonderful. And I said, excuse me? Wonderful? Did you hear what I just told you? I told you I just dreamt about leaving my children. And he said, wonderful. He goes, because you didn't. But your mind is telling you yourself that you need a break, that you need a rest and you need some sleep. That's wonderful. You see, our emotions are just indicators of something in our lives, and it's our body's way of telling us that we need something. We get angry at our spouse for going out to golf because we really are actually in need of a break too, or we feel resentment about how happy their kids seem because we haven't made the space in our lives to tend to our relationships. Anyone who has parented teens or toddlers, or in my case, both at the same time, because there's a 15-year age gap between my oldest and youngest, which I don't recommend, we see how they can maximize their emotions. These emotions, they are almost always indicators of something else that's going on. It's that they're tired, or they're stressed, or they're feeling lonely, or sometimes they're just plain hungry. Our emotions, they tell us that something is going on in ourselves, but not necessarily exactly what is going on. So it's up to us to use our big brains in order to figure that thing out. But yet, we still manage to go to great lengths to avoid or to harness or to control or numb or stuff our emotions, instead of realizing that they are a gift. They are a deep resource that God has given us. Throughout the Bible, we can read that Jesus himself felt emotion. Someone went out there and counted about how many emotions Jesus felt, and it was 39 different emotions that we can read about in the 4 Gospels, meaning that God feels emotion. Isn't that amazing? Jesus, when he lost his friend Lazarus, he publicly wept, even was grieving. Even though he knew he was going to raise him from the dead, Jesus grieved deeply with his whole body. Jesus felt betrayal when his friend Judas sold him out for a few pieces of silver. And when Jesus sent out 72 followers and they came back telling him all the things that God had done, Jesus felt overjoyed about the work that God did through them. Jesus felt anger when he saw the religious people mistreating the people that they were responsible for so that they could push their own gain. Jesus felt anguish in the garden when he prayed, knowing that he was about to go to his death. And Jesus felt contentment when he sat in the home of his friends Mary and Martha and told them the stories of God's love for them. All these emotions Jesus experienced, meaning that God experiences emotions. And I think that if Jesus was willing to experience those emotions to help us see that those feelings, that emotions aren't just necessary for us, but they're good. There's a story in the book of Luke that goes like this. Jesus went with his disciples to the village of Nain, and a large crowd followed him. A funeral procession was coming out as he approached the village gate. There was a young man who had died and was a widow's only son. A large crowd from the village was with her, and when the Lord saw her, his heart overflowed with compassion. Now, Jesus, he's walking through this village and he comes across a funeral procession and they're carrying the casket out. And it's not like this person died a bunch of days earlier. It's not like it is in our culture. There wasn't embalming or anything like that. So it's likely that this boy, this son, died either that day or the day before. And here they're carrying out his body. And here's this grieving woman, not just a woman, but she's a widow, meaning that she had already lost her partner and now she has lost her son. In this society at this time, a widow with no children, she would have been left with only 2 options. She would have left to become a beggar or a prostitute. But on top of all this grief that she's experienced, Jesus sees her. Jesus sees her hurts. Jesus sees her in her grief, and Jesus sees her in her pain, and his heart overflows with compassion. Now, compassion in the Greek is actually this word spelagna. Isn't that a fun word? It means to feel from the gut, from the intestines, to spill out emotion from the bowels. That's such a big word. Spelagna is like when you come across an accident and you recognize the car in the accident and you realize that this is bad, but it's probably also someone you know. It's that kind of feeling, that kind of compassion that Jesus has for this woman, this spelagna, this compassion in this English, it goes like this: come meaning the word with, and passion meaning the word suffering. So Jesus experiences this compassion for this grieving woman, this kind of spilling from the gut, this kind of willingness to suffer with her. It's that kind of compassion, that kind of complicated and deep, deep emotion. And I don't know who of you needs to hear this today. Who of you who are feeling overwhelmed, who are grieving, who are feeling all alone, who are stressed, who are heartbroken, who are shamed, who are angry, who are humiliated, who are insecure, you who are hurting, the Lord sees you and he cares. He cares with this kind of Spelagna compassion for you, this kind of gut-pouring empathy for you. The Lord sees you. Jesus sees you. Jesus looks over at this woman and he says to her, he says, "Don't cry," he said. And then he walked over to the coffin and he touched it. And the pallbearers stopped. "Young man," he said, "I tell you, get up." And then the dead boy sat up and began to talk. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. My friends, Jesus touched the coffin. He looked into the pain of the widow. He leaned into the pain of the suffering and into the hurt, into the emotion of it all, both the grief and love at the same moment. And Jesus did something about it. My friends, he cares. So if you've ever wondered where God is when you hurt, he's right there in it. God is having all the emotions that you are having. God is with you, and God is with you in your sadness and will be with you in your joy and all the things in between of what complicated emotions that it is to be human. When my mom died of cancer in 2017, the emotional armor that I had carried around before that, it just broke. It broke into a jillion million pieces, and where I had never had tears before, they started, and they have never stopped. My mom, she was so healthy. She was the kind of woman who ate all organic food all the time and walked 3 miles every morning religiously, and she was kind. She cared for others, and she studied her Bible every single day. So the brain cancer diagnosis was a complete shock to us. And after 9 terrible months of treatment, that was it. She was gone. Why would God take my mom at the age of 67 years old? And when I was grieving her death, the accumulated emotions of all the past hurts came tumbling down on me like a carefully constructed domino obstacle course that was unstoppable. The grief that I experienced was cumulative. Not only was I grieving my mom at that time, but I was grieving my miscarried babies. I was grieving my divorce, my childhood moves, my grandma, my teen pregnancy, my students who had hurt, my son's birth defect. It all came running down on me in a stream of tears that I couldn't stop. The armor that I carried around was broken. And I hurt, not just emotionally, but physically hurt from the weight of all that emotion that I had been carrying around for years. This grief hurt. And I wondered where God was in all of this. My friends, when we're hurting, when we're grieving, when we're angry, when we're feeling so deeply that it's easy for us to wonder why an all-powerful God doesn't just prevent us from feeling this badly, and we wonder and we pray to God will just take away this pain. The point is not that we're going to not have pain, but that God's in there with us. Author Philip Yancey puts it this way, said, "Is God somehow responsible for the suffering of this world? In this indirect way, yes. But giving a child a pair of ice skates, knowing that he may fall, is very different from knocking him down on the ice." God loves us so much that God chose freedom instead of control. God chose to love us, to feel with us, to be with us. That means that God is with you when you hurt. God feels it all with you. God has compassion for you. God grieves with you. God is always with you. 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Cast all your cares on him because he cares for you." And then Romans says, "In the same way the Spirit helps us out in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes through wordless groans." Or Psalm 55 says, "Give your God your cares and he will sustain you." Or even further in Hebrews, God has said, "I will never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." Just like the widow who lost her son, God's coming in close. God sees you. God notices you. God has got you. Wherever you're holding hurts, God is holding you. So, how are you doing really? Really? Whatever it is that you are going through, whatever it is that's keeping you up at night, whatever's got you worried or anxious or afraid, whatever hurts so much that you don't even want to talk about it, wherever it is that you're hiding or numbing or keeping a secret, whatever burdens it is that you're carrying, whatever it is that you're feeling, hear this message of hope today. Jesus has compassion for you. In Jesus, you are good. You are loved and wanted. You are seen. Your needs are not a problem. You are safe. You are not alone. You will be taken care of. You are important and you are enough. God has got you and all your beautiful, vulnerable, complicated emotions too. Amen.
Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true.
'Cause I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free.
Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true, 'cause you are strong, you are sure, you are life, you endure, you are good, you is true, you are light breaking through. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Speak what is true. You are more than enough. You are here. You are love. You are hope. You are grace. You're all I am. You're everything. Yeah. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord.
You can have it all.
Here's my heart, Lord.
Here's my life,
Here's my
Lord.
life, Lord.
Speak what is true.
Speak what is true.
Speak what is true.
Speak what is true. Thank you so much for joining us for worship today. Please join us in praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for worship today. I'm just really honored that you have spent this time with us. We really do care about you here at Calvary, and we really want to know how you're doing, really. God has got you, God is with you, and God sees you. Here at Calvary, we're excited to launch our fall services and our fall programming. You can find out all of that information on our website at calvaryalex.org. If you have kids between birth to seniors in high school, we would love for them to come join us for our programming here at Calvary. We'd love to have you come to worship in person as well. All those times are on that website. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to close with the time of generosity. It's because of your generosity that we're able to do things like launch a huge fall programming here at Calvary. There are 4 ways that you can give, and they're on your screen. The first is you can go to that website, calvaryalex.org, and click on the button that says Give. The second is that you can go to Venmo. The Venmo handle is on your screen. You can give that way. The third is that you can write a check and mail it into the church office at 605 Douglas Street, Alexandria, Minnesota, 56308. And the fourth is that you can call the number on your screen, and we'll help you figure it all out. Hey, have a great day. God's with you.